Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Shacharesha Tarine Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadara Shivasari Gauravakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 So we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th canto, chapter 25, the characteristics of King Puranjana. Vamos a leer del Srimad Bhagavatam, capítulo 25, las características del rey Puranjana, text 19, el verso 19, traducción, significado, translation, purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Nanaranya Mriga Vratair
Nanaranya Mriga Vratair.
Anabade Muni Vratai
Anabade Muni Vratai.
Ahutang Manyate Panto
Ahutang Manyate Panto.
Yatra Kokila Kujitai
Yatra Kokila Kujitai.
Nanaranya Mriga Vratair
Nanaranya Mriga Vratai.
Anabade Muni Vratai
Anabade Muni Vratai.
Ahutang Manyate Panto
Ahutang Manyate Panto.
Yatra Kokila Kujitai
Yatra Kokila Kujitai.
Nanaranya Mriga Vratai
Nanaranya Mriga Vratai.
Anabade Muni Vratai
Anabade Muni Vratai.
Ahutang Manyate Panto
Ahutang Manyate Panto.
Yatra Kokila Kujitai
Yatra Kokila Kujitai.
Nana
Nana.
various, diversos.
Diversos.
Aranya
Aranya.
forest, bosque.
Bosques.
Mriga
Mriga.
animals, animales.
Animales.
Vratai
Vratai.
with groups, con grupos.
Con grupos.
Anabhadhe
Anabade.
in the matter of non-violence, en no ser violentos.
En no ser violentos.
Munivratai,
Muni Vratai.
like the great sages, como los grandes sabios.
Como los grandes sabios.
Ahutam,
Ahutam.
as if invited, si fuera invitado.
Como si fuera.
Como si fuera invitado. Manyate,
Manyate.
thinks, piensa. Panta, passenger, viajero.
Viajero.
Yatra,
Yatra.
where, donde.
Donde.
Kokila,
Kokila.
of cuckoos, de cuclillos.
De cuclillos.
Kujitai,
Kujitai.
by the cooing, con el canto.
Con el canto.
So we are hearing from King Puranjan, traveling around the world. Estamos escuchando la historia del rey Puranjana, que está viajando por el mundo entero, and he's looking for a place where one can be happy. Está buscando un lugar donde ser feliz. We are already laughing because we know by experience this is a very difficult undertaking. Sabemos por experiencia es una tarea muy difícil. And he had the same difficulty. It's always going to be the same difficulty anytime, anywhere. Y él tiene la misma dificultad. Va a ser así siempre, en cualquier lugar. We heard that he, after traveling for so long time, he became frustrated because he couldn't find a place that was to his liking. Escuchamos como se frustró porque después se viaja tanto y buscar tanto no encontró lugar que a su agrado. And as we also know from experience, if we find a place that is to our liking, that will not last very long. Y también sabemos por experiencia, si encontramos un lugar que nos guste, no dura mucho. After some time we will find some defect. At least one, probably more than one, ¿no? Después de un tiempo encontraremos algún fallo, algún defecto, y probablemente más de uno. And then we think about maybe in a different place it will be better, ¿no? Quizás en otro lugar será mejor. So we go to another place. And then the same thing happens, ¿no? Lo mismo pasa. In the very beginning, everything is very nice, ¿no? Al principio, todo muy bien. And after some time, then again, we find something that we don't like. Y después de un tiempo, vemos algo que no nos guste. So that's Puranjana's situation. Y Puranjana, as we know, is us. It's a living entity. It's an allegory, this whole story. Y lo mismo pasa a Puranjana, que en realidad somos nosotros. Es una alegoría, la historia del rey Puranjana. Narada Muni speaking to King Prachina Barhishat. Narada Muni habla a ese rey. So now finally King Puranjana has found a city with 9 gates. Y al final ahora el rey Puranjana ha encontrado una ciudad con 9 puertas, which is the body, es el cuerpo, una alegoría. It's an allegory for the body. Our body has 9 holes, 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 nostrils, mouth, anus, and genital. Los 2 oídos, los ojos, la nariz, la boca, el ano y los genitales. And there's a description here about this city, how nice it is with so many beautiful palaces and gateways and avenues and this and that. Y hay una descripción muy hermosa de esa ciudad, con sus palacios y sus avenidas, etc. And now we have this verse, which describes the conclusion of this nice situation. Tenemos ahora este verso que describe como la conclusión de esa situación, and it says, in such an atmosphere, even the animals of the forest became non-violent and non-envious like great sages. En aquella atmósfera, incluso los animales del bosque dejaban de ser violentos y envidiosos. Eran como grandes sabios y no atacaban a nadie. Consequently, the animals did not attack anyone. Over and above everything was the cooing of the cuckoos. Y el canto de los cuclillos dominaba el ambiente. Any passenger passing along the path was invited by the atmosphere to take rest in that nice garden. La atmósfera era tan agradable que todo el que recorría aquel camino se sentía invitado a reposar en el hermoso jardín. Purport, significado. A peaceful family with wife and children is compared to the peaceful atmosphere of the forest. La pacífica atmósfera del bosque puede compararse a una pacífica familia con esposa e hijos. Children are compared to non-violent animals. Sometimes, however, wives and children are called svajanakya dasyu, burglars in the name of kinsmen. Aunque se compara a los hijos con animales que no son violentos, otras veces se dice que la esposa y los hijos son svajanakya dasyu, asaltantes que se hacen pasar por familiares. A man earns his livelihood with hard labor, but the result is that he is plundered by his wife and children, exactly as a person in a forest is attacked by some thieves and burglars who take his money. El hombre se gana el sustento trabajando con gran tesón, Pero el resultado es que la esposa y los hijos le despojan de todo, exactamente igual que los asaltantes y ladrones del bosque que atacan a las personas en el bosque y les quitan el dinero. Nonetheless, in family, the turmoil of wife and children appears to be like the cooing of the cuckoos in the garden of family life. Aún así, en una familia el alboroto de la esposa y los hijos suena como el canto de los cuclillos en el jardín de la vida familiar. Being invited by such an atmosphere, the person who is passing through such a blissful family life desires to have his family with him at all costs. Bajo la seducción de esa atmósfera, la persona que pasa por esa feliz vida familiar desea tener a su familia con él a toda costa. So, any questions? ¿Alguna pregunta? Because this sounds, well, how shall we call it? ¿Cómo vamos a llamar eso? ¿Cómo suena eso? Like a parody or una parodia, ¿cómo se llama? Una calumnia. Slander. Yes, for sure, we are not completely in agreement, I think, what is said here. No estamos completamente de acuerdo con lo que se dice aquí. That's generally how the conditioned soul feels when this kind of description is given. Generalmente el alma condicionada se siente así cuando ese tipo de descripción se da, because that's not the only place where we have this kind of description. No es el único lugar donde se describe algo así. Well, before we start, we'll do soon some question. Let me go, because Prabhupada mentions in this verse Svajanakya Dasyu. ¿No? Antes que empecemos con preguntas, vamos a ir a donde, como Prabhupada menciona, Svajanakya Dasyu. Because this description is very positive. ¿No? Esa descripción es muy positiva. Es un jardín muy pacífico. ¿No? It's a very peaceful garden where the animals are peaceful, they're non-violent, non-envious, donde los animales no son violentos, no son envidiosos. Generally, animals are not like that. ¿No? Por lo general, los animales no son así. We could say animals, they're very much centered in their own needs and benefits, and they don't care very much for anybody else. Un animal, en primer lugar, ves por su propio bien, su beneficio, y no se preocupa demasiado por los demás. There are exceptions, no hay excepciones, but generally even the animal takes care of the family. Pero por lo general el animal cuida su familia. We always have the example of a lioness, which is a very ferocious animal. It attacks and eats other animals, but when it comes to their own children, they're very protective. No como la leona, es un animal feroz que se come y ataca a otros animales, pero cuando se trata de los propios hijos, son muy protectoras. So then when an animal is non-violent, it's like paradise. We have seen a picture where the lamb and the lion next to each other, right? Eso es como una descripción del paraíso. Cuando el león y el cordero están sentados al lado del uno al otro y no pasa nada. Or as we have heard in the forest of Charikanda, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu imbued all the animals with love of God, then the tigers and the deer were kissing, not the tiger was normally eating the deer, ¿no? Como hemos escuchado en el bosque de Charikanda, cuando Chaitanya Mahaprabhu dio amor por Dios a los animales, pues los ciervos y los tigres se abrazaron y se besaron en vez de que el tigre se come el ciervo. So this is generally only happening if there's very high Krishna consciousness. Eso solamente pasa cuando hay una conciencia de Krishna muy elevada. But in this case, it's just a description of a very beautiful atmosphere in the material world where we become seduced. Prabhupada uses that word. One becomes seduced. Pero en ese caso es una descripción del mundo material, de una situación muy agradable, donde hay un tipo de seducción. Uno se siente como muy atraído y quiere que esto, at all cost, ¿no? A toda costa, que esto perdure y que todo sea así. Now, Svajanakya Dasyu. This comes from a verse in the 8th canto. Esa palabra que Prabhupada aquí cita, Svajanakya Dasu, viene de un verso del 8º canto. It's from when Bali Maharaj surrenders his life. Y eso viene cuando Bali Maharaj entrega su vida after having been arrested by Vamanadeva and the Varuna ropes, ¿no? Después de haber atrapado,
Haber sido atrapado. Después de haber
ha sido atrapado o capturado por Vamanadeva con las ropas, las cuerdas. Sounds exact, but it's not. Las cuerdas de Varuna. Entonces, vamos a ver si viene esto. Me obedece, que no obedece. Yo quiero los dos idiomas. So this is verse number 6, I think. Oh, let's see. No, verse number 9. Verse number 9. Oh my God. No internet. That's the problem. Again, otra vez.
¿Qué pasa?
Que no hay internet. Yo tengo esto.
Yo puedo traer mi internet si
Hija mía, ya,
No.
no. ¿Eh? No, este de aquí, el router.
El wifi de aquí.
Ya, sí. No, lo que tengo que hacer es ir al database y traducirlo de alguna manera. Sí, no te preocupes. Vamos a ir directamente al 8º canto. So we go to the 8th canto, and I don't have a dual view for the translation. What can be done? So we have text number 9. So Bali Maharaj, he actually speaks about his experience after having been arrested. ¿No? Bali Maharaj habla cómo se siente después de haber sido capturado. And he actually doesn't mind. No le importa. And he praises Vamanadeva being actually his well-wisher. No le importa, dice, y él alaba a Vamanadeva como su benefactor o su, ¿cómo se puede decir? Bien queriente. He says, by chastising us, the demons, you give us the eyes by which to see the right path. ¿No? Como por chastising-nos, castigando. Por riñendo o...
por reprender.
Reprendernos, nos da los ojos para ver el camino correcto. Que a veces hace falta. No? Sometimes that's necessary. If it's all very nice, everything is nice, then we don't wake up, we don't see things as they are. ¿No? Si parece que todo muy bueno, no hay ningún problema, pues no vemos las cosas como son. Now, in this verse that Prabhupada quotes, Bali Maharaj, he says, Kim rikta harai svajanakya dasyu bi. Ese verso donde Prabhupada saca la cita de ese Jana Svajanakya Dasyubi. So Svajana Akya Dasyubi actually means they who are actually plunderers, but who pass by the names of relatives. ¿No? La traducción de ese término es aquellos que son en realidad son como bandoleros o ladrones, pero se hacen pasar con el nombre de parientes o familiares. Now el verso es, it's a little heavy, es un poco pesado. He starts with saying, what's the use of the material body, which automatically leaves its owner at the end of life? ¿No? ¿Para qué sirve? ¿Qué valor tiene el cuerpo material que por sí solo, sin más, deja a su propietario al final de la vida? Ya empezamos bien. And what is the use of all one's family members who are actually plunderers, taking away money that is useful for the service of the Lord in spiritual opulence? ¿Para qué sirven los miembros de la familia que en realidad son ladrones, que quitan el dinero que se puede usar para el servicio del Señor en opulencia espiritual? What is the use of a wife? ¿Para qué sirve una esposa? She's only the source of increasing material conditions. Solamente es la fuente de condiciones materiales en aumento. And what is the use of family, home, country, and community? ¿Y para qué sirven la familia, el hogar, la nación y la comunidad? Attachment for them merely wastes the valuable energy of one's lifetime. Los apegos a ellos simplemente desperdician la valiosa energía de la duración o de la vida que tenemos. So then, of course, there is a purport by Srila Prabhupada, hay un significado de Srila Prabhupada, which we may read, at least part of it. It's quite long. Podemos leer una parte, es bastante largo. Now the point is, who is Bali Maharaj? He is the grandson of Prahlad Maharaj. No? Bali Maharaj es el nieto de Prahlad Maharaj. Both are kings. No? Ambos son reyes. They have family. They have wife, children. They have a kingdom. They have a great opulence. No? Tienen familia, tienen esposa, tienen hijos. Gran opulencia. And both Prahlad Maharaj and Bali Maharaj, they come finally to conclusions like the ones we heard here. ¿No? Y ambos, tanto Bali Maharaj como también Prahlad Maharaj, llegan a conclusiones que son parecidas a lo que hemos escuchado aquí. For example, Prahlad Maharaj, and he just he speaks about, when he speaks to Nrsingadev, he's a small boy. ¿No? Prahlad Maharaj, cuando él habla a Nrsingadev, es un niño pequeño, 5, 6 years old, 5 o 6 años. But whatever he speaks, he's repeating what he has heard from Narada Muni. Y lo que habla es lo que había escuchado de Narada Muni. And in this story with Puranjana, it is Narada Muni who is speaking to King Prachinabarhishat. En esa historia que estamos escuchando, es Narada Muni quien habla al rey Prachinabarhishat. So in his prayers to Nrsingadev, Prahlad Maharaj also speaks about this family life, and Prabhupada quotes this quite often, Yanmai Tunadi, Grihamedi, Sukham hi tuchcham. He says that actually this situation of being surrounded by family members and enjoying life, it provides happiness, but it's insignificant. Él dice que esa situación de la familia donde nos estamos rodeados de miembros de la familia y eso provee o produce un sentimiento, sentimiento de felicidad, sukham, pero es tuchcham. Tuchcham significa insignificante And not only that, in that verse, he also says, Tripyanti neha kripana bahu dukkha dukkham. Although one tries to have as much happiness as possible, tripyanti neha, one is never satisfied, and bahu dukkha bhaja. This whole situation ultimately produces a lot of suffering. Dice que aunque uno intenta de obtener la máxima cantidad de felicidad de esa situación, tripyanti neha, primero uno nunca está satisfecho, y bahu dukkha bhaja, todo eso al final produce mucho sufrimiento. No solamente un poco, bahu, mucho. So, otra vez, again, we don't like at all to hear this. No nos gusta para nada escuchar todo esto. So what to do? ¿Qué hacer? Cerramos el libro más bien y abrimos Facebook, ¿no? Más agradable, ¿no? We close the book and go to the Facebook page. It's easier to digest, para digerir. So anyway, I don't want to go on and on because, what can I say? So let's hear some question. Easier to answer any doubts we may have, or maybe we do agree with some of this, what is said here, or with all of it. We should actually agree with all of it, ¿no? O sea, deberíamos estar de acuerdo con todo lo que se dice, pero quizás no estamos de acuerdo, o queda alguna duda, sí, pues a ver.
So you know in the last purple where it said that women are like burglars, women and children are like burglars.
Uh-huh.
Does a man not also steal from a woman? He steals
Oh,
from
nowadays it's Kali Yuga, they're worse than that.
I don't mean money, I mean...
No, I understand.
and the man also, he steals her
Yes,
youth, he
yes.
steals everything. So
Yes.
when a woman meets
Yes.
a man, her body is firm, she's very beautiful.
That's right.
And as time goes on, she has more and more children, her body begins to age, it begins to sag. So she pays a cost just as much as him. Although
Yes.
it's a monetary value that he pays, a woman pays with her energy in her life.
That's right.
So it's an
So
equal match.
let me try to translate that a little bit. So we heard, hemos escuchado en el verso, el verso de hoy, que la mujer se considera, y los niños se consideran como ladrones, que quitan el dinero al hombre. Pero ¿qué pasa con el hombre? Que también tenemos la situación que él se comporta de una manera que perjudica tanto a la mujer como a los hijos. So this is, of course, in Kali Yuga, this is nothing uncommon. So this is not an uncommon thing in Kali Yuga. But one thing we should understand, and it's not always clear, una cosa que hay que entender que no siempre es muy clara. And Prabhupada explains it. When we hear in Shastra about the woman being like, the source of problems, like, let's say, for a man, it's also the other way around. Cuando escuchamos en las escrituras que se dice que como la mujer puede ser la causa de problemas para el hombre, es también, hay que entenderlo de la otra manera. Because not everything can be always, we're not going to do, or Prabhupada didn't do like nowadays people say he or she when they speak about something, no? Just to make sure we are not sexism. We only speak about the men and we don't speak about, no, he or she. But it's convoluted. When we say he or she, it means or she or he, it's interchangeable, ¿no? Cuando hablamos cuando las escrituras hablan de la mujer, se puede sustituir por el hombre y viceversa. Es como cuando muchas veces se habla siempre es él, pero también él o ella, da igual, o sea, es lo mismo. When it says that the woman is the force that binds us in the material world, ¿no? Cuando se dice que la mujer es como la fuerza que ata al mundo material, that's for the man, and for the woman it's the man who is the binding force. Y para la mujer es el hombre quien ata a ese mundo material. And nowadays we have to even make it more broad. Hoy día tenemos que ampliarlo más. That for a man is the binding force, and for a woman is the binding force, and maybe it's trans. We don't even know exactly what is what. You may be polyamorous. So anything that attracts you is a binding force in the material world. Even a deer for marriage, bharata. ¿No? O sea, no tenemos que pensar así. Y hoy día tenemos que ampliarlo, que el hombre es el problema para el hombre y la mujer para la mujer, o trans, o poly, or whatever. And even un animal puede ser problema, como en el caso de Bharat Maharaj. So wherever our heart goes, that will bind us in the material world, ¿no? Donde vaya nuestro corazón, eso nos ata en el mundo material. Now the classic situation is what is described here. The family life where man and woman are together, not man and woman, which, yes, it's happening, but the scripture describes the classic situation, and we can apply it and extrapolate it to any other situation which is similar, ¿no? Las escrituras nos dan la situación clásica entre hombre y mujer, y de ahí podemos ampliarla o extrapolarla, no, extrapolate. Anyway, sí, extenderla a otras situaciones similares. No, we have to understand the principle, and therefore also I said we don't like what we hear, ¿no? O sea, yo dije que no nos gusta escuchar lo que estamos escuchando, pero si entendemos el principio, ¿cómo se puede rechazar la conclusión, ¿no? If we understand the principle, we cannot really reject the principle, because that's how the material world is, ¿no? Es como el mundo material es así. We like it or don't like it, that's how it is, ¿no? Nos guste, no nos guste, las cosas son así. It's like when we say the problems, basic problems are birth, death, old age and disease, ¿no? Cuando decimos que los problemas principales, fundamentales, son nacimiento, muerte, vejez y enfermedad. And we know when we speak to people, if you begin to speak about death, sometimes they interrupt you and tell you, we don't want to talk about this. It's coming anyway, so what's the use of talking? It just makes me miserable. And I don't want to hear about it. Let's enjoy as long as we can and forget about it. ¿No? Cuando se habla de eso, por ejemplo, la muerte, la gente no quiere escucharlo. A lo mejor te interrumpe y dice, no vamos a hablar de eso, ¿no? La vida es hermosa tal como está, vamos a disfrutarla mientras se pueda, y ya la muerte ya vendrá por sí sola, y ¿qué se van a hacer? And anyway, it's inevitable. So what's the point of talking about it and making us miserable, ¿no? Porque de todos modos es inevitable. ¿Para qué vamos a hablar de eso y hacernos sentirnos miserables? Now Krishna says, that's not a good idea. Krishna no dice que no es una buena idea. Anudarshanam. Janma mrityu jaravyadi dukkha dosha anudarshanam. So he recognizes it's a dukkha, it's a dosha, but you shouldn't close your eyes and forget about it. ¿No? Krishna reconoce que es dukkha y dosha, pero no es algo que tenemos cerrar los ojos y olvidarnos de ello. Dukkha dosha means it's miserable, it's a misery, and it's a defect, ¿no? Esas dos palabras significa que dukkha es una miseria, es un sufrimiento, y dosha es un defecto, es un fallo. So then we may wonder, how is that? He's the creator. Why does he create something that's full of suffering and full of defects? It's not a very good creator, isn't he? No? O sea, si él es el creador, ¿cómo crea algo que es defectuoso y miserable? No es un buen creador. That's one of the main arguments of the atheists. ¿No? Eso es un argumento principal del ateo, que he's going to say, what kind of God is it? Is he, not she, is he, or he or she or he, who creates a world which is full of suffering, and he doesn't do anything about it? ¿No? ¿Qué tipo de creador es si crea un mundo que está lleno de sufrimiento y no hace nada al respecto? He's supposedly all powerful and all good and all knowing. So how can he allow this to happen? ¿No? Si es todopoderoso y todo bueno y omnisciente, ¿cómo puede permitir que ocurran cosas así? And then we don't know what to say. ¿No? Y no sabemos lo que vamos a decir a eso. There are, of course, we have the answer, but that takes a good understanding of philosophy. Tenemos respuesta, pero eso implica un buen entendimiento de filosofía. Anyway, so I'm not sure. Did I answer your question? Or halfway? Three quarters?
I was just going to say about suffering.
Okay.
So when atheists say, it's full of suffering, it's this, it's that, when a plant is coming through the mud, so it grows from a seed and it goes through the mud, it's very painful for that plant to get through the soil.
I'm not sure.
We
think like that, maybe, but it may not be true.
Trying to get through the soil, they'd be very, it feel painful, but when they get through the other side, they go, thank God.
That's nice.
I
never heard that, but...
Yeah, and that's how this earth is. So it's
okay, so...
When you go to the transcendental part of becoming a lotus.
Interesting analogy. Sí. Bueno, la idea era cuando hablamos de sufrimiento, que es como una planta cuando sale de la semilla y brota para atravesar la tierra, o podemos decir, ¿cómo se llama? La crust, la cubierta, ¿no? Que puede ser dura a veces, pues ella dice que siente dolor, pero cuando está fuera, por fin, un alivio, y da las gracias al Señor que haya salido eso, y nosotros más o menos igual cuando salimos del mundo material y al mundo espiritual, pues es eso. Yes, in one sense, although, of course, we may now again argue a plant doesn't feel pain, that's why there are plants. Yes, they are very much covered, their consciousness is so much covered, even you cut a tree or cut a branch, there's no protest, there's no tears, there's no crying, there's no blood. And it's not that they don't feel, but it's so, insignificantly small, the degree of suffering, that's practically zero.
It's just a metaphor.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. One may argue against this, ¿no? Se puede argumentar en contra de eso. Porque una planta en realidad no siente dolor, un árbol se le puede cortar, se puede sacar las hojas y no protesta y no hay nada por el estilo, como una entidad viviente donde el nivel de la conciencia es más elevada. But anyway, it's an analogy, it's an example, es una analogía, un ejemplo. And of course it's part of the explanation why there is suffering in the world, but it's just impossible now to go into, the reasons for that. Es una de los aspectos por qué hay sufrimiento en el mundo, pero es imposible entrar en detalle en el razonamiento por qué existe el sufrimiento. We can say, ultimately it's our own doing. We only receive reactions to our own actions. Primero podemos decir, todo lo que ocurre son reacciones a nuestras propias acciones. Sometimes it may not be visible that somebody has done something to deserve suffering, ¿no? A veces no es muy visible que alguien ha hecho algo y por eso merece sufrir. But anyway, it's just not possible to go into details about this. But so how did we get there? ¿Cómo hemos llegado a eso? La planta sí, pero well, yes, if we talk about death, or that Krishna says we shouldn't forget about it, ¿no? Que Krishna dice que no debemos olvidarlo, que el mundo es así, diseñado con un propósito, ¿no? The world is designed in that way with a purpose. Actually, we can just generally say the purpose is to make us understand it's not our home. ¿No? O sea, el propósito general es para hacernos entender que no es nuestro hogar. It's not the place, like Puranjana tries to do, to find a situation where we just are happy. No es un lugar donde queremos o podemos encontrar un lugar donde ser feliz. And that again, yes, we can give a very brief, general philosophical understanding. The nature of the living entity, because it's spiritual, is incompatible with the material world. La naturaleza de la entidad viviente, como es espiritual, es incompatible con el mundo material. How do you get into the material world? We generally say by our free will and our desire, ¿no? Como llegamos a estar en el mundo material, por lo general decimos por nuestro propio libre albedrío, tomamos esa decisión y por nuestros deseos. But it's not the place where you can be happy. Like a fish out of water is impossible to be happy, has to be in the water, ¿no? Es como un pez que está fuera del agua. No puede ser feliz al menos que esté dentro del agua. So, as spiritual beings, we cannot be happy in the material world, so we have to be in the spiritual world, ¿no? Como seres espirituales, no podemos ser felices en el mundo material, sino tenemos que ir al mundo espiritual. So, but we try to be happy in the material world, and suffering will just show us it's a useless endeavor. Como intentamos hacerlo en el mundo material, el sufrimiento nos muestra, nos recuerda que es una empresa, una tarea sin futuro, o sea, inútil. We would like to have paradise without God. Queremos tener paraíso sin Dios. And therefore the atheist rejects the idea that there is a God, because we would like, if there's a God, he should make this place paradise, but he shouldn't be there. ¿No? O sea, por eso rechaza el ateo la idea de que hay un Dios, porque si existiera, él debería hacer este mundo paraísico, pero sin estar. He's all good and all powerful, and we want to enjoy. So why doesn't he make an arrangement so we can enjoy without any problem? ¿No? Queremos ser felices y disfrutar. Y si él es todopoderoso y todo bueno, ¿por qué no hace un arreglo para que todo sea así? Now the answer, of course, is we say, yes, there is a place, but you have to go according to his will, and not according to your will. ¿No? O sea, hay un lugar así, y puedes ir, pero no según lo que tú piensas como debe ser, sino como él dice como debe ser. You just give up everything here and you come to me. Oh, no. No. Hay que dejarlo todo y ir allá. No, eso tampoco, eso no quiero.
I was going to say, God did create a paradise, and it's called Earth, and he made it paradise where we see that back in the past the animals were very kind, and we were able to interact with them without any envy, without jealousy, without fear. But then it's through our own consciousness, because we have fallen so low in consciousness and we're very aggressive towards each other. We've turned heaven into our own personal hell. But that's not God's fault, that's our fault.
That's right. Yes. So, el paraíso existe, eso sí, pero si no está, pues es debido a nuestros propios actos. And Vaikuntha, that's the Sanskrit word for paradise. You know? Vaikuntha is el palabra sánscrita por paraíso. It's the place where there's no fear. ¿No? El lugar donde no hay ansiedad, no hay temor. And it's just there. You can go if you want to go, but you have to qualify. Y cualquiera puede ir, pero hay que cualificarse. That's all. Es como cualquier otro lugar. You want to go, you have to be qualified to go. First of all, you have to pay the ticket. Primero hay que pagar el billete, si no va. So anyway, I think we are run out of time already for 1 minute. So unless there's a very important commentary or question, we'll stop right here.
Eso que decías, ¿no? Del corazón, ¿no? De que el corazón es la principal causa de sufrimientos muchas veces, porque donde tú
where the heart goes, donde va el corazón.
Afloran a través del corazón, ¿no? Y entonces muchas veces es erróneo lo que elige el corazón.
So,
Entonces es la causa del problema más potente que tenemos dentro
yes.
de este cuerpo material, ¿no?
Yes, the heart is the problem because the heart is the seat of our desires. ¿No? Es el lugar donde están los deseos, our attachments, los apegos. And wherever the heart goes, there you go. ¿No? A donde va el corazón, allí vamos nosotros. So if it goes to husband and children, I'm not going to speak about wife anymore because all wives are here. The husbands are almost absent. No vamos a hablar de los esposos, no más de las esposas, porque casi no hay esposos, algunos pocos. So it doesn't matter, esposa, esposo, los hijos son para los dos. If our heart just goes to that and it includes the little dog also, then we have a problem. ¿No? O sea, no importa si hablamos de esposas o esposos, husbands or wives. The children are for both, ¿no? Son para ambos. Y el pequeño perro, el perrito. Si el corazón va ahí, if the heart goes there, tenemos un problema. Because then we will stay. Krishna will fulfill the desire. You want to have a situation like this, very nice, very good. You get another body, just so you can fulfill that desire. ¿No? Solamente vamos a tener otro cuerpo para cumplir ese tipo de deseos, which happened to Bharat Maharaj. He was very much attached to the deer. Okay, take birth as a deer and enjoy life as a deer. Bharat Maharaj, mucho apego para el ciervo. Muy bien, nace como ciervo y disfruta de la vida como ciervo. So, depends. Then, therefore, Krishna says, Maya Sakta, Mana Partha. You put your heart, your attachment to me. Then you come to me, and all problems are solved. Ahí está. Krishna le dice a eso a Arjuna, que tú ponga el corazón donde yo, tus apegos donde estoy yo, y vienes a mí, y todos los problemas resueltos. So, we end on a positive note. You add some positive, more positive.
Oh no, it's a good one. So I'm really attached to cats.
So don't be very careful unless you want to become a cat.
I was going to say this. So I'm attached to cats because I see Krishna in cats.
Then you're very advanced. It's hard for me to see Krishna in the cats. I should
It's
see.
in the eyes. It's in the eyes.
Wow.
I see Krishna in animals. So I don't worship animals, but I love animals.
Yeah. Well, it's almost the same. Worship and love goes very close together.
So will Krishna know that I've done it because I love him, or will he?
Well, that depends. If he knows for sure, but you may be illusioned. So that you have to be careful about.
Don't get too attached.
That's right. That's right. Then you will think of a cat when you die, and then you will become a cat. Yes. So better go to Vrindavan. You die in Vrindavan as a cat. And become born in Vrindavan as a cat, and that's your last life.
Will I become a cat as nicely treated as I treated the cat?
It's a gamble, maybe, but it's not very much recommended. Krishna doesn't say think of a cat. He says manmana bhavamat bhakto, think of me. So you said yes, I think of him when I see a cat. I say well, hopefully, because you may think, but maybe not. So it's better to follow Krishna's advice and think of him in his two-armed form instead of him being present in a cat. I recommend that. ¿No? O sea, mejor si uno ve a Krishna en todas partes, incluso en el gato, vale, pero es un poco arriesgado. Si de repente cuando uno muere no ve a Krishna en el gato, si no ve al gato uno va a volver a nacer como gato. Krishna dice, piensa en mí como con el Krishna con dos brazos, no como gato, o como incluso el Paramatma en el gato. Anyway, he says, yes, a pandit, a learned person, sees Krishna everywhere, even in the dog and the cat and the Brahman and the elephant. But he doesn't say, therefore think of the elephant and the dog, and he says, think of me. So, Krishna dice que sí. La persona erudita ve a él, o al espíritu en todas las entidades, incluso en un perro y un elefante y brahmana, Pero él no dice que piensa en un elefante o un perro, sino piensa en mí. So, let's follow Krishna's advice.
If we worship Krishna and we give our life to Krishna, I think all the other attachments that come, like husband, wife, children, cats, dog, whatever comes to us, they come by Krishna's mercy. So it's a different thing altogether. Like you're not worshipping them, but you love them, but you
That's
love
okay.
them.
Yes, you do your duty. That's right.
Krishna.
So we are all in agreement. This is wonderful.
Yes.
And let's think of Krishna in whatever form, but best is in his form, with a flute in his hand, and be happy. Oh, vamos a pensar en Krishna con la flauta en las manos y ser felices. Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ramjara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Shri Radha Chandra Gauranta Gauravatavrinda ki jai.